Now, I know many people, the paperback just came out. Many people have already read the book, but for those few members of our audience that haven't quite picked it up yet, what is Bitcoin Billionaires?
Yeah, so Bitcoin Billionaires is the incredible second act of the Winklevoss twins. It's the story of how they went from, getting a settlement with Mark Zuckerberg, which they hated, which they didn't want, which they wanted to turn down, and then turning into this massive Bitcoin fortune. They were on the beach in Ibiza. Someone wandered up to them and said, "Have you guys ever heard of Bitcoin?" And that was someone who worked with Charlie Shrem, who was one of the OGs, I guess, of Bitcoin. And the twins ended up working with Charlie. And it's this crazy drama because if you know Charlie's story, it's so different than the Winklevoss story. I mean, Charlie was, 18-year-old kid living in his mother's basement, pot smoker, kind of a rebel, who started BitInstant, one of the first ways that you could buy and sell Bitcoin. And the Winklevoss twins were one of his first investors, along with Roger Ver. And so that story of those three different ideologies, essentially, is really quite incredible. So it's the story of Bitcoin in a way, starting from when Bitcoin was at $7, which is when the Winklevii brought in, to 10,000. So it was kind of the first run up of Bitcoin. It doesn't really, it kind of ends at 10,000. So it's that story. But I wanted to capture all of Bitcoin that I could in the story of the Winklevoss twins, because to me, their arc in that world is what sort of takes it from when it was libertarian anarchists like Roger or people like that, to the possibility of it being listed on exchanges, or the possibility that my mother might have Bitcoin. So I think that that's the transformation that it shows. But it's a thriller, and it's in many ways starts where the social network ends.
Cool. So in the movie, are we going to see a Charlie Shrem character, a Roger Ver character, and any other people Bitcoiners would know?
I think they'll all be there. I mean, that's the plan. We set up the movie. It was announced recently, I think, on Deadline that Greg, what did I just lost his last name? Greg,
he's a Bitcoiner? Or?
Yeah, no, he was the former head of Warner's. Is running the movie. He's basically,
I know who you're talking about.
The movie, and it's going to be really, really cool. And we're in the process right now of setting it up in terms of who the writer is going to be, who the director is going to be, and so it's going to be a big major motion picture. I'm excited. So we're in the early stages. Hollywood got frozen, as you guys know well. Everything.
Don't we know it?
Ran to a halt recently. So unfortunately, Greg Silverman. Sorry, I don't know why I'm blanking.
Yes.
Getting old. So Greg is an amazing guy, really, really brilliant. And what's interesting is his kid brought him the book, and him and his son read it together and became obsessed with it. And so they're heralding it. The Winklevoss twins are involved in a production capacity, which is really cool. So it should be great. But yeah, we plan to have a Charlie Shrem, we plan to have a Winklevoss twins. Maybe Army will come back, maybe not. We'll see how that goes. Roger will be in it. All the different characters who kind of weave in and out to that story will be there.
Could you list a couple of the other characters that maybe Bitcoiners would know?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many different people who move in and out of that story. But Erik Voorhees, right, is going to be a big character in the story, I think. I think you'll see even people who are, less involved, maybe the Virgin guy, what's his name? Branson. Richard Branson would probably be a meeting between him and the twins.
A lot of Bitcoiners are virgins, so.
Yeah, exactly. The twins move in and out, trying to push Bitcoin on so many different people that I think there'd be really cool cameos of lots of sort of celebrity type Bitcoin people throughout. But the other main characters, the Silk Road story is in it, so Russ will be there because that takedown is a big chapter in the book, and how that all unfolds. So I think that that story would be told within this story. So yeah, I think there's going to be a lot. And then, there's a political side of it because the twins, go up in front of Congress or whatever it is, and then not Congress, but the New York financial system, and have to give a big talk. So there's lots of different sort of faces that are involved in that. So yeah, I think most of the famous people you'll see will be in the movie.
Cool. Now, Roger Ver was a huge part of Bitcoin early adoption in the early years, and he's still a big part of it, but now he's more of a controversial person in the space. I don't know how deep you are into it, but
yeah.
is it going to be capturing the Roger from the early years, do you think? Or?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think, you know, as the story progresses, Roger really comes in. So Charlie is the man in the middle, and Charlie is being pulled to two sides in Bitcoin Billionaires. Roger, you know, is his first investor, is basically the libertarian anarchist who wants to see governments fall. And he believes, you know, that drugs should be good and used in as much as people want them, although he doesn't do drugs and he doesn't drink, but he believes in freedom the way he's a true libertarian, I think. So yeah, he's a wild character in the story. He's also a genius. He's also one of the real true believers in Bitcoin in the beginning. So the shift to where he gets off, you know, spirals off into what he's doing now isn't till after this story. So this story, right. But there's a lot of friction between him and the Winklevoss twins. He sees them sort of as the privileged Harvard men of Harvard who are coming in, you know, on the government side almost in his view. They're establishment, they're mainstream. They want to see Bitcoin at ATM machines. They want to see Bitcoin on the New York Stock Exchange, and in some form or another. And so there's real, you know, animosity, I think, there coming from Roger towards the twins and the twins back and forth through Charlie. So yeah, that, I think it's a great fun character. I mean, it would be a really fun character for some actor to sink his teeth into. You know, he's driving around in this blue Porsche, you know, taking Charlie to parties with girls, and it'll be a fun character.
Yeah. So the Winklevii were the antagonists in The Social Network, obviously. Is Roger Ver the antagonist in Bitcoin Billionaires?
You know, I don't know if I would call him the antagonist in this. I think to some extent the story revolves more around Charlie and the Winklevoss twins. I think it's not that Charlie's the antagonist, because he's not in any way. And I have a lot of sympathy for Charlie. And I think a lot of people who read the book really like Charlie coming out of it, because he's a kid who gets caught up in being the rock star, the crypto rock star. And, you know, he's the kid at the club throwing 20s and with the big bottles of alcohol, and ends up falling in love with the cocktail waitress. And, you know, he's that guy. He represents every young person who gets into Bitcoin's dream, because he skyrockets. At one point, they say, what is it? 1 out of every 3 who had Bitcoin bought it through Charlie. But then he goes to jail, you know, then he does some stupid things. He makes some mistakes, and it's all right in the book, but, you know, he let someone buy Bitcoin to use on Silk Road, and his emails showed that he knew what the guy was doing with it. Now the government made a scene out of him. They didn't need to take him down that hard. They didn't need to send him to jail for 2 years for selling Bitcoin, because it's not like he bought drugs, and it's not like, you know, his punishment was way beyond, I think, the crime. But he was really the first person thrown in jail for Bitcoin. So it's not that he's the antagonist, but him and the twins definitely have a falling out. You know, they're trying to turn his company into something serious, and he is running around, you know, crazy. And sort of all kind of comes to a head between the three of them. So in that respect, you know, Roger is definitely the devil on Charlie's shoulder in the story, who's pulling him towards the darker side of Bitcoin.